It's October and it's time for Purposely Unplugged with Lori. It's fair time. I know you're always busy this time of year, but thank you for taking a moment to talk about, well, work-life balance, because that's something that you're probably negotiating right now. You're busy doing all these different things, lots of plates in the air. How the hell do you do it?
One day at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. And when I actually pulled some ideas together for this, I realized, Dave, this might be a topic that's two conversations, not one. Like work-life balance is a huge component for all of us.
I want to start today because I read so many different things, and my concept of work-life balance is probably different than yours. But I always thought, oh, that just means more time off to do the things I like to enjoy. Couldn't be any further from the truth, could I, on that?
Well, it's really more about just the minimalization of work-related stress and the establishment of stable and sustainable way of life that just allows us to have our health and to kind of be well. And really, as I did a little bit more research, I found a wonderful video today by Brian Tracy of all and his dad. So Brian Tracy and his dad are talking about two different things, kind of leveraging technology and digital detox really as a main component. But I'll bring it back. What they talked about work-life balance is harmony and satisfaction. Those were the two words that they've attached to work-life balance, harmony and satisfaction.
I like those. Those are two, when you're looking at it, those are two really good words to describe what you should be looking for in that relationship with work. You did mention there, though, in that, and I want to go a little bit deeper, the technology piece. Can we dive into that a bit more right now?
Sure. And as you and I talked off air, we really think the technology piece is affecting all kinds of things on the job, and stress related to the job, as because we never shut off, as well as just managing the technology while we are on the job. That's kind of what they're talking about, right? Leveraging technology to our advantage for efficiency, but then digital detox, knowing when to shut the phone off, put the phone away, and not focus on the phone. So it's really intricate coming from both angles.
And that, I'm going to throw this at you, and I want your feedback on it because I think a little bit of stress isn't a bad thing, but too much stress is obviously, an overload. But how do you define that?
Mhm.
Like if there's a little bit of stress, oh, I need to get this done today. I understand that. And you can lay that within your day's schedule to get it done. But, when you got 20 things on your plate, right? You're not going to get there.
Mhm. And I think that's different for every job and every different situation. And you're right. I mean, we're moving at the speed of light, both at work and in our personal lives. So it really doesn't slow down. So it's really not just one or two things at work, it's also one or two things in our personal life, and it all adds up. So, and the thing is, too, I mean, we all respond differently to stress. So some of
Yeah.
us are motivated by stress, but then we all have this tipping point around stress as well. So it's difficult to give a generic answer because it depends what we've acclimated to.
Yeah, for sure. Because, and that can, I think as time goes on, right? Like one of the scenarios I always think about is if you have a job and then you do a good job, but then they pile more on you. You know what I mean? More work. Oh, he can do more. But that's not really, I don't know. To me anymore, that doesn't work, in my opinion. I mean, I think when you and I grew up, you were pretty satisfied to have a job, and you worked your butt off because you wanted to keep that job. But it's such a changing time, isn't it, as far as work and the expectations?
Hmm. Absolutely. And again, that brings us back to our family of origin, too. What did our parents demonstrate for us? What did they expect from us? And then what's kind of imprinted for us? So I think we see a big difference, too, in some generational concerns around that. So, I mean, this is where when you and I started talking about it, we realized there's so many more
Yeah.
pieces to this. And in all reality, I mean, yes, companies are trying to survive. That's why perhaps when one person resigns, they're taking those duties and putting them on someone else. And honestly, in my practice, I hear that all the time. So that is happening. We know that's happening. And that's really companies trying to stay afloat in light of what they're faced with. And honestly, Dave, one of the best resources that I have found, there is a Mental Health Commission of Canada. And in 2013, they came out with something called Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. This
Yep.
is voluntary. It's a entire report. And if employers took a look at that, then they would be shifting some of their opinions. That same commission, though, Dave, tells us that 500,000 Canadians cannot be at work, report to work any given week because of stress and because of mental health.
Holy smokes. Right there. Right. That's huge. I don't, you probably put that in dollar figures somehow and it'd be in a massive amount. So that mental health aspect comes right there to the forefront again as something we need to, I don't want to say deal with, but we need to be more aware of to understand better. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a second part to this too. So the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety has a wonderful poster. They call it an infographic nowadays, Dave, not a poster, an infographic. So, but that, if you download that or if employers download that, it indicates that employees are working 50.2 hours per week. That half of us as Canadians are taking work home with us every day, and 3.7 million workers are dealing with a high level of stress, work stress, every day.
Wow, those are big numbers
Mm-hmm.
in a country that's 40 million and you got 3.7 carrying that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big workload. And the other part that we didn't even touch on is the amount of people now that are having a second job to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So you throw that in, right?
Second jobs, third jobs, and that gets accentuated as well in blended families, single parent families. That gets really magnified. I remember my oldest son, telling me a few years ago, "Well, Mom, you always had 3 jobs at once."
Yeah. You're always
He was wanting to take a second job, and I said, "Really think about that." And he's like, "Well, you always had 3, Mom."
there you go. It's that what you said. Are a lot of human resource departments understanding this better in bigger companies? Are they getting that?
They can if they have the time and resources available to do that. But then there's a staffing crisis that's coming in behind this, though, too, right? I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg? We really don't know. But there's a staffing crisis, too, in Canada that's affecting us. So we are seeing stores closed. We are seeing kind of less and less people at checkouts. We're seeing that because the staff aren't there. So I recognize for HR teams, too, that that's a challenge. There's several challenges here.
And I think that kind of leads to possibly more technology in these, in our retail outlets. And I think, it's such a big shift anymore comparative to what it was 10 years ago. I think we're probably on the precipice of something totally different changing again. But again, if you don't have a workforce that's willing and able, I guess, and if it's not a balance, if there's no balance, then how do you make that work in society, right? And is it people like when you see these, and I kind of, I wonder because I think, well, there's still people looking for work. I mean, in these scenarios that we're talking about, maybe they just don't want to work in those situations. I mean, we're stretching this a little bit, but I kind of wonder about that too, because, you're like, you will definitely hear people say, I don't want to do that. Right. And maybe that's them understanding their own work-life balance or just having no interest in, certain fields, I guess, to go into these days.
Mm-hmm. It could very well be, and there's multiple things affecting it from all perspectives. Now, the opposite of that, Dave, is that when you look at it, Canada's ranked in the top 5 of work-life balance index, and that's a 2024 stat.
Wow.
And really, we're ranked that way because we have, on average, 37 hours hours of work a week, and that we are a more inclusive workforce than some other countries. So it's a real dichotomy. I mean, from a world level, we are ranked 5th in work-life balance, but in reality, there's lots of complications that we see affecting that.
You think too, I mean, from a business model point of view, being, sort of a solo business guy, Work's work. You do it when you have to do it. I mean, there's another level of this that we could talk about as far as independent businesses, small businesses, which make up 90% of this country. These folks are not taking the day off. They have to work to make enough money to pay their bills. And I think that's another area where we got to look at how we can protect small business and keep it growing, because without it, the economy kind of dies off. There's that work-life balance right there. I can tell you from my own experience the last 4 years, it's a struggle to maintain something that's uniform and gives you that better balance, because you're always, as an individual who runs a business, and you know this as well, you're always thinking that way. You're always like, oh, I got to do this, and you'll go and do it. And that's, a different mindset again.
Very different mindset. You're right. That's probably an entirely different show.
And I think we're looking at the workforce this week. We're not really talking how to make these balances work. But I mean, it's another scenario, right, where you're like, that's where I'm interested to see when we have our next show where you talk about these balances and see what I can implement to maybe make it my balance better. I think my balance is pretty good, better than it was 20 years ago for sure. But at the same time, it's a constant that you kind of deal with. And you do independent stuff too as well. And I'm sure you're well aware you can have a busy week or a quiet week, or you can, you're always looking for different things to do. Is when we talk about the work stress component, and you mentioned the mental health, does that lead to anxiety? Does it lead to depression? Like, is that where we got to cut it off, get that balance better so we don't have those other issues to deal with?
Can be absolutely anxiety, absolutely depression, but there's also toxic work environments too.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of the folks that I talk to, they've been in a toxic work environment. So that's where I came back to kind of the psychological health and well-being, because the dichotomy here is that sometimes employees are feeling like they're not doing a good enough job.
Right.
But the reverse of it, and to help that, some managers or employers, if they could just communicate that differently, set boundaries, set expectations so employees know that they're doing a good job, then a big component of that anxiety and those depressive things would move. So it's kind of a dichotomy there. It's difficult. But absolutely, you can see anxiety, you can see depression. There's all kinds of comorbid things that can happen, but sometimes it's a toxic work environment that's at the beginning of that.
And you know yourself too, if you're stuck in a job and you need that job, right? You tolerate as much as you can, because that's you got to have it. I'm interested, just if you don't want to answer it, it's cool. But what's some of the things that people are concerned about with the toxic work environment? Maybe folks don't even know what that means.
Things around harassment. So Employment Standard Act outlines this very, very well. The Human Rights Code and Commission outlines this very, very well. So those are websites for someone to look at if they're feeling this. Any kind of harassment, any kind of situation where you're feeling cornered, bullied, any kind of situation where you've shared these things with management and the resolution just hasn't been found yet. In lots of situations too, I think some people are just burning out, Dave, because when others call in sick, that means these folks are the ones that need to pick up the shifts. So, burnout could be part of this as well. There's so many pieces that could be attached. And honestly, I mean, there's this old adage, right? People don't leave jobs because of the work. They leave because of a management structure.
That makes sense. This is such a defining thing that's probably going to be, like you said, it's come up quickly and it keeps growing in the next few years. And I'm interested in our next show, because we're going to talk more about finding that balance, right? And sort of where we can go with it. And I think that's to me, that's the critical part of this too. And I really didn't think about the management, what you were just saying about how it can be a bad environment that way, because, like we talked about at the top of the show, I was just like, oh, I just need more time off, right? That makes the balance even better. But you're right. If you're in a situation in a job that's not working and it's harassment of any sort or anything like that, then you got to look at it. You have to step back from it and make the right decision for your own mental, physical health, correct?
Right. Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. And I like that we've broken this into two shows. So next time we talk, it is going to be about the balance. How can I find balance? How can I establish balance? What does this look like? Because we know so many people, if not you, someone in your family, someone within your friend group, someone within your tribe, so to speak, the Simon Sinek tribe, someone you know is struggling. And just the information around how do you find the balance and establish the balance will be helpful for you or those people in your circle.
I got to ask one more question because we sort of touched it, but we didn't really go into it a bit. The different generations as far as what work-life balance means, because me being my age, my work-life balance compared to somebody that's 20 might be totally different.
It's always totally different.
Right. So is that another big factor that we're seeing in this? Like
It can
most
be.
management's probably going to be a little bit older than the worker, right?
Yeah. 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 Even though in the same age bracket, I mean, my work life balance might be totally different than yours, even. So we see that in the same generation and cross generation. And there's lots of work for managers to kind of research that and know how to work with, motivate, speak to, encourage different ages within the workforce.
And I think there's, and again, to look at it, like you said, the work-life balance too, and just looking at different lifestyles of folks these days. Maybe there's gender fluidity. There's lots of other areas that we could touch on this, but that affects work as well, doesn't it? I mean, that's something that is an educational component that could cause work stress all the way around.
It may not. I mean, there's lots of pieces. It's how someone kind of acclimates their own life and how they are living their life,
Okay.
and then how people around them react. So
Right. Exactly.
it might not even be anything related to that specifically. Uh, there's lots of pieces, but it's how do I deal with stress? How much stress can I manage? What does this look like for me? What does my work look like? That's the work balance part, right?
Yeah.
And we do know that so many Canadians are struggling just with work stress, and it's very real. And the next time we talk, yes, we'll talk about the balance piece.
And you keep bringing these things up. Now I'm thinking we probably should have touched base on guilt,
Oh,
because you will work. If you feel guilty,
yeah.
they've asked me to come in, I should go in and help out, right? There's another generational thing there where it's okay to say no, right? If you're not up to it that day, or if your own health or mental health needs that break, I think that's when you did mention that when we were talking about people doing overtime and all this other stuff. And it's like, that's something else to look at as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got our work cut out for us next month, Lori.
We do.
Work-life balance, that's the topic today. Lori, how do people get a hold of you?
Phone is always best, 226-934-7425.
All right, folks. And thanks for doing this, and look forward to this conversation next month. Have fun at the fair.
Take care.